The autumn rain fell softly on the small town of Millbrook, creating gentle ripples in the puddles along Maple Street. Sarah Collins stood before the old house, her heart beating with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The paint was peeling, the shutters hung at odd angles, and the garden had long surrendered to wild overgrowth. But it was hers. For just a few $1,000s, this forgotten place had become her new beginning. Sarah was 28 years old, and life had not been kind to her lately. She had lost her job at the publishing house 6 months ago, and her small apartment in the city had become too expensive to maintain. When she saw the listing for this house, sold for what seemed like pennies, she knew it was a sign. A chance to start over, to build something of her own. As she turned the key in the lock, the door creaked open, revealing a dusty interior filled with shadows and memories. The air smelled of old wood and forgotten time. Sarah felt a strange mix of excitement and loneliness wash over her. This house was empty, silent, waiting, just like she was. The first few days were difficult. Sarah cleaned room after room, sweeping away years of neglect. The floors groaned beneath her feet, telling stories she couldn't quite understand. At night, lying on her air mattress in the empty bedroom, she would listen to the house settling around her, and sometimes she felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Had she made a terrible mistake? Was she truly alone in the world, with nothing but this crumbling house to call home? But Sarah was determined. She had always been a survivor, even when life tried to break her spirit. It was on a gray Thursday morning, while cleaning the kitchen, that Sarah noticed something odd about the old cupboard built into the wall. The wooden panel didn't quite fit properly. As she ran her fingers along the edge, she felt a gap, a space that shouldn't be there. Her curiosity growing, she carefully pulled at the panel. With a soft crack, the false back of the cupboard came loose, revealing a hidden space behind it. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached into the darkness. Her fingers touched something smooth and cool. Slowly, carefully, she pulled out a small wooden box, beautifully carved with intricate patterns of flowers and vines. For a long moment, Sarah simply held the box, feeling the weight of it in her hands. Someone had hidden this here perhaps many years ago. Someone had carved these beautiful patterns with love and patience. The thought made her feel connected to this house in a way she hadn't before, as if the walls themselves were beginning to trust her. She opened the box. Inside, wrapped in faded cloth, were bundles of old letters tied with ribbon. Beneath them lay a few photographs, their edges worn soft with age, and a small leather journal. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she carefully lifted out the first bundle of letters. The handwriting was elegant, flowing across the yellowed paper like a gentle stream. She began to read. The letters were from a woman named Elizabeth, written to her daughter Grace during the war years. Elizabeth had lived in this very house, and her words painted a picture of a life filled with both struggle and deep, abiding love. She wrote about waiting for news from her husband at the front, about growing vegetables in the garden to feed her children, about nights when fear threatened to overwhelm her, and about the quiet strength she found in the walls of this home. My dearest Grace, one letter read, when times are darkest, remember that home is not just walls and roof. Home is where we pour our love, where we face our fears, where we become who we are meant to be. This house has held me through storms both outside and within. I hope someday it will do the same for you. Sarah sat on the kitchen floor, reading letter after letter, tears streaming freely down her face now. These weren't tears of sadness anymore, but something deeper, something that felt like healing. Elizabeth's words spoke directly to her own heart, to her own fears and doubts. In the journal, she found Elizabeth's daily thoughts, her hopes, her recipes, her observations about the changing seasons. She read about how Elizabeth had planted roses by the front steps, how she had painted the shutters blue because it reminded her of hope, how she had stood at the window during difficult times and reminded herself that she was stronger than she knew. At the back of the journal, Sarah found a final entry, written in slightly shaky handwriting. To whoever finds this, know that you are not alone. This house has stories to tell, love to give. Let it shelter you. Let it help you grow. And when you are strong again, pass that strength forward. Sarah closed the journal and held it against her chest, feeling something shift inside her. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. This house had held Elizabeth through her struggles, and now it would hold Sarah through hers. The next morning, Sarah woke with purpose burning in her heart. She went to the overgrown garden and began to clear away the weeds. Beneath the tangle of neglect, she found the remains of Elizabeth's rose bushes, old and woody but still alive, still fighting. Sarah carefully pruned them, whispering encouragement as she worked. In the following weeks, Sarah began to truly make the house her own. She painted the shutters blue, just as Elizabeth had done so many years before. She repaired the front steps and planted new roses alongside the old ones. She framed her favorite letter from Elizabeth and hung it in the kitchen, where she could read it every morning. But more than that, Sarah began to open her heart. She invited her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, for tea and listened to stories about the neighborhood's history. She volunteered at the local community center, helping others who were struggling just as she had been. She started writing again, something she had abandoned when life became too difficult. The house slowly transformed, but so did Sarah. The loneliness that had weighed so heavily on her heart began to lift. Replaced by a quiet sense of belonging, she had found more than just a cheap house on Maple Street. She had found a home, a history, a reminder that strength and love could survive even the darkest times. On the anniversary of her first day in the house, Sarah sat on the front steps in the gathering dusk, watching the roses bloom in shades of pink and gold. She thought about Elizabeth, about all the people who had faced their fears within these walls, and she felt grateful beyond words. She had bought this house for pennies, expecting nothing more than shelter. Instead, she had found something far more valuable. She had found herself, her strength, her place in the world. And just as Elizabeth had asked, Sarah knew that when the time came, she would pass that gift forward to whoever needed it next. The house on Maple Street stood quiet and peaceful in the fading light, its walls holding centuries of stories, its rooms filled with the gentle echo of love that never truly fades, and Sarah was home.